Hello, I'm Lawrence and I'm on a quest to uncover all of the memos that Britain and America lost in the pond, and one of those memos pertains to the things either side of it. Beaches. Remember beaches? Beaches were a big part of my childhood. I was born in the seaside town of Cleethorpes. I holidayed in Devon and I watched things like Jaws, a film depicting terrible tragedies at sea, and Jaws: The Revenge, a terrible tragedy. But those childhood experiences were only a taster of what was to come. After moving to America, I realized that many universal seaside traditions from my youth weren't universal at all. The British and American beach culture were like chalk and cheese or the word lieutenant. Sure, your standard beach will usually come with large helpings of sand, waves, and David Hasselhoff, but look closer because everything from the sea life to the beach food is quite different on either side of the pond. So pull out your bucket and spade as we take a look at 4 ways British and American beach culture is very different. It's often said that the biggest difference between Britain and America is that America thinks 100 years is a long time and Britain thinks 100 miles is a long way, but that's not it. The biggest difference is food. And while that's the sort of thing that I might say after subsisting only off a single fajita, it's even true at the seaside. For instance, my American wife had never heard of sticks of rock. And if you're like her, a stick of rock is a type of stick-shaped boiled confectionery sold at seaside resorts in Britain. They're painful to eat. In fact, Venn diagrams show a significant overlap between rock consumption and stereotypes about British teeth. Willy Wonka himself would have ruled it a step too far, and while the Candyman thinks he can, he bloody can't. But another staple of British seaside is the 99 flake. This is a soft-serve ice cream topped off with a Cadbury flake. It's immense. But to me, few things are more immense than the meal of my hometown. Fish and/or chips. Don't get me wrong, fish and/or chips is plentiful in America. It's just not particularly synonymous with American seasides. To uncover every food item that is, I'd need a notepad, a dietary translator, and about 26 hours. That's because American beach food varies from region to region. In New England, they're all about their clam cakes and pier fries, which is sort of like fish and/or chips but without a knife. In the mid-Atlantic, New Jersey sells rippers. These aren't tiny clones of Peter Sutcliffe, but a type of hot dog that burst after being deep-fried in oil. I want that right now. In the Great Lakes, particularly in Michigan, something that smelled fried was fried smelt. Fried smelt is basically tiny battered fish, but it's also the reason my cat is staring at me right now with all the intensity of Quint from Jaws. On that note, southern beachgoers apparently need something with a little bite. Restaurants accommodate this by putting fried alligator on the menu. At first I assumed this was just another American food title that comically incorporated animals, like elephant ear, puppy chow, and hello panda. But fried alligator is actual alligator. And in case you're wondering, the meat can only be legally sourced from alligator farms, which apparently exist outside of the James Bond universe. Bearing the berry imported from Brazil, Acai Bowls are all the rage on the West Coast, where it's important to have a beach body like Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson or YouTube sensation Lawrence Brown. In the Pacific Northwest, people dig for and eat razor clams. Despite their name, razor clams are not suitable objects for shaving with. If I could speak to my younger self, that's what I'd tell him. And in Hawaii, they're all about their poke, and when I say their poke, I mean it. This fish salad originated on the islands along with the ukulele and the surfboard. Speaking of which. So much for edible objects. What about the kind that you don't stick in your mouth? This should definitely apply to windbreaks, which are useful for breaking coastal wind, less so for breaking your own. They were all over British beaches when I was a kid, and by all accounts you still see them, but I wasn't sure of their popularity stateside, so I fielded responses on Twitter. On the whole, my American followers arrived at my consensus that windbreakers aren't really a thing over here. This accounts for why George Lucas wrote lines about sand getting everywhere. Moreover, the British have another way of evading the elements. Lining the sands of several beaches up and down Britain, beach huts are also used by beachgoers for getting changed, storing belongings, and definitely not for acting out the name of a fruity cocktail. But there's one other thing to note about beach huts. You're far less likely to find them in America. This is perhaps not surprising, given that the southern and eastern coasts frequently endure enormous hurricanes. But if America did have them, there's one item that they're more likely to store than us Brits: surfboards. While surfing has made some waves, In Britain, it ain't got nothing on America. This calls to mind the song Surfin' USA by rock and roll legends the Beach Boys. Tragically, of course, the song was later covered by Aaron Carter. But modern surfing came to the US in the early 1900s via the Hawaiian surfers Duke Kahanamoku and George Freeth, the latter of whom died during the global flu pandemic of 100 years ago. That said, the relative absence of surfing doesn't mean that Brits don't have anything to ride at the beach, and I'm not just alluding to what they get up to in their huts. I'm talking about donkey rides. Throughout the UK, a popular seaside pastime is riding donkeys on the beach, and this is an activity enjoyed not by humans, but children. As someone who's done it, I'd always assumed that this happened the world over, but by all accounts it's a weird British thing. My hope is that our two countries can come together to invent donkey surfing. Until then, let's talk about other seafaring animals. It's often said that Britain and America are two nations divided by a common language, but they're also two nations divided by 300 million cubic kilometers of water. Because of this, and because America has a secret second ocean out back, it stands to reason that some marine animals get lost in the pond. Take, for example, the great white shark. In Jaws the Revenge, a great white disguised as a Fisher-Price toy swims from Martha's Vineyard to the Bahamas after catching wind of Ellen Brody's travel plans. And all of that totally checks out because great whites do like to roam the shores of those places, but also the shores of many other not Britain places. One of those places is California, where fatal great white attacks are the highest in the nation. Of course, there have only been about 15 of those in the last century, but a record is a record. On the other hand, fish such as the Atlantic cod, Atlantic plaice or Atlantic mackerel only grace America's northeast. In Britain, these surround the entire country like moving boxes currently surround me. In fact, everything that I just said is true of the Atlantic puffin too. Often found on cliffs up and down Britain, Atlantic puffins always seem like Britain's consolation prize for missing out on penguins. Of course, there are plenty of other birds that we missed out on too. You might recall that the British wartime singer Vera Lynn famously sang, "There'll be bluebirds over the white cliffs of Dover." The problem is Dame Vera lied. Bluebirds are unique to North America. And I've just realized that Dame Vera might be watching this. What I meant to say was, Dame Vera, your American lyricist lied. Actually, he was just confused, like me. Speaking of words, it's often said that Britain and America are two nations divided by 300 million cubic kilometers of water, mainly by me, but they're also two nations divided by a common language. Why should life at the beach be any different? Earlier, when discussing food, I neglected to include what Americans call cotton candy. That's because it's available at seasides on either side of the pond, except in Britain, there's one crucial difference. It's not called cotton candy, it's called dental loss. I'm joking, it's called candy floss. It's sort of the perfect way to distract children as you walk along the promenade, or should I say, boardwalk. It's hard to know because both words have currency in both countries. It's just that promenade is foremost in Britain while boardwalk is more prominent in the US. Equal disparity can be found over the pronunciation of a certain floating device, used for navigation, marking underwater objects, and eliciting the question, what is that thing? A buoy can serve many purposes. Its biggest purpose, though, is starting flame wars between Brits and Americans, the latter of whom usually pronounce it buoy. But are you sick of all those arguments? I am. How about this, right? Just for once, let's rise above it. Let's not take the bait. Let's ride the wave together. It's an ideal worth floating. I'll stop now. That's it for this episode. Let me know in the comments below if you really miss the beach like I do, and if your beach body survived quarantine like mine definitely did. For more of my words, be sure to follow me on Twitter at LostInThePondUS, and please subscribe to my channel so that my videos don't get lost in the pond. This video would not have been possible without my patrons who support this channel and help make it better. Become a patron today at patreon.com/lostinthepond and gain access to my secret live streams. Anybody that pledges $5 or more a month will get access to that and my secret videos and podcast and more. All right, that's it. Goodbye.